last week several stories were told, very earthy stories about flaws, cracks. And we know those cracks of these stories related to that basic thing in ourselves, that basic sense of unworthiness, because we all feel deep down that we're not worthy or we're not good enough in some way or other. But let's now dip ourselves in one of the great mysteries, and we have been exploring these mysteries. There's a line in one of the poems of the great Sufi poet and mystic, which says and speaks of the ground of unknowing, where the rose always blooms. And we can wonder what this line means. We know it's profound, and deep down we feel it. But what does it really mean? There was a story of a king. He was very kind and very fair, and he took care of his kingdom very well. But he loved jewels. He had an amazing collection of gems. And amongst those gems was the most perfect diamond, the most exquisite diamond. And every day after he'd been taking care of the affairs of his kingdom, he'd go into his coffers and he'd bring out this diamond to remind himself of the perfection, that there was something perfect in life. But a terrible thing happened. One day when he was caressing the diamond, it flew out of his hands and went rolling onto the stone floor. When he picked it up and looked at it, there from top to bottom was a huge crack. He was absolutely, terribly distressed. Never again. This thing of perfection, the only thing of perfection in his life, was cracked. He called the gemologists. He called all of the craftsmen from all over his kingdom. He even called soothsayers and magicians. But none of them could repair his diamond. But then, one day, an old craftsman came by, and he said to the king, "I can make your diamond more perfect even than it was." "Oh," said the king, "many people have tried before you unsuccessfully." "No," said the craftsman, "give your diamond to me for 1 week, and I will make it even more perfect than it was before." So after a week, the craftsman brought the diamond back to the king and handed it to him. And the king held it up to the light, as he usually did, but there was the crack, still there. He said, what do you mean by this? The floor is still there." Then the craftsman took the diamond back from the king and turned it around and handed it back to the monarch. And when the monarch looked, he saw that the craftsman had carved an exquisite rose on the top of the diamond. So now, from the rose, the crack came down as a stem. What could this mean for us relative to our recognition that no matter what we've done in our lives to repair, to make ourselves perfect, to make ourselves better, to get beyond being unworthy, no good, not good enough. What does it really mean when that line says, the ground of unknowing where the rose always blooms? And, the question has been asked over these last months. What is it that occurs when we arrive at this impasse, this place of rest, where we have nowhere to go? Stillness, we might call it. The end of the road, we might call it. And the movement of life still goes on. What happens when these two meet? Could it be that this is when the craftsman carves the rose? Out of that meeting of stillness and movement, in whatever way stillness has been brought to us, hopelessness, I can't go anymore, I don't know what else to do. That's stillness. Or after our spiritual practices, where we now know that we just remain present and here always. What is it that arises from this? Could it be that it's the craftsman carving that rose, so that the floor that was there becomes the stem for us? Does it go away, our feeling of unworthiness? Even though the other day I didn't weep and weep when I heard Amazing Grace, it was still there in my belly. When that line comes, saved a wretch like me. The lump was in my throat, the lump was in my heart. It's still there. Doesn't go away, does it? In a way, it's a saving grace. It stops us from having that spiritual ego where we walk around thinking that we're something holy or something. So it has its purpose. But in looking at our spiritual journey, in examining the dimensions that we've had to pass through, and embrace in the end that nitty-gritty, we're still in the world of cause and effect. That place where intuition was there, but we didn't listen to it, but now we do, it's part of our life. And that recognition of the interrelatedness of everything, so that we have these three levels in our life. They're there. It's called Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss. They go together. But within that, there's always been that crack, hasn't there? That jagged...
The fine line.
Yes. So, where is it? What is it? What is this craftsman that comes along and carves that rose? It's the place we arrive at, isn't it? Because we can feel it. Can't you feel that rose being formed? Aren't you yourself creating that rose? Aren't you the carver of that? See it in the moments of our life now, in everything that we do. Aren't we doing that? Carefully, crafting that rose. We haven't got anything else to do. We've got nowhere else to go, have we? So then, when we hear this line of the great poet Rumi, the ground of unknowing, where the rose always blooms. We don't know from up, do we? Can you go back to any knowledge or any book? I can't. Any book that I've read said, oh yes, not that yet. Nothing. That's it, isn't it? What else have we got to do but carve out? And a rose has to have a stem, because that stem is what connects us to life. Without that, we wouldn't be able you want to put it into the common parlance, we'd be so bloody pure that we'd have to go floating up to heaven.
Good one.
Right? So, we need that stem. So let's get on with it. Let's keep carving our words, whatever way is appropriate for us, isn't it?